And something that interests me is that journey that they took to get the plates back. You know, when Lehi sends them to go and get the plates from Laban. Do you know much about that journey? Like, what would that look like in today's terms, almost?
Well, I mean, we know basically the area they're going through, right? Because they go down from Jerusalem to the Red Sea, and so we know that area. And they're going to be going down to the Gulf of Aqaba. That's the part of the Red Sea they would have come to if they go straight south from Jerusalem. And actually, what's interesting is right there at the Gulf of Aqaba are the mines of Timnah, which were actively used copper mines at the time. And Jeff Chadwick kind of argues, we know Lehi doesn't have the Liahona yet, so the Liahona is not telling him where to go. Why did Lehi choose to go that way in the first place? Well, he thinks that Lehi's probably gone down to these mines before to get ore and to do business with miners and metal workers down there. So this is kind of like he's familiar with the area. He probably has friends or business contacts there. And so that might be why he's going down in that direction. And then, we're told by the text they go another 3 days, and then they set up in the Valley of Lemuel. And that's, that's most likely the Wadi Tayyib al-Ism that you mentioned earlier. And that's about a 250-mile journey between there and Jerusalem. And so, when Lehi turns around, after they've done that, right, it would have taken between 10 to 14 days, a week and a half to 2 weeks, basically, to make that journey. And so when Lehi turns around and tells his sons, hey, by the way, got to go back to Jerusalem. We forgot something. Oh, and by the way, the thing we forgot, Laban has it, and you're going to have to get it from him. And they probably know who Laban is. They probably know. I mean, we know they know who Laban is. They're like, oh, he can command 50. He can command tens of thousands, and he can slay 50. And we're going to go and try and ask him for metal plates. We're going to ask him for this valuable artifact in his possession and say, hey, you want to just give that to us? So yeah, that's a daunting sort of thing. And if you even in our modern times, right, if you were to go on a vacation, right, and you drove 250 miles, and then like your dad or somebody turned around and said, by the way, we're all going to stay here, but you've got to drive the 250 miles back and go get some, like, I wouldn't do it, right? Even today with an air-conditioned car and being able to, drive, really fast, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour or whatever, right? It would be a few hours and that would be too much for me. I'm like, nope, not doing it. But he's saying go back in the desert, right? This is a desert. Most of the terrain they're going over dry, barren, hot. And Lehi is saying, sons, I need you to go back, and go back these 14 days or these 10 days, and then do this really hard thing in Jerusalem. And by the way, remember when the family left, people wanted to kill Lehi. So how eager are people going to be to see his sons back in town, kind of thing?
True.
Who knows? It's a hard thing. And I think, whether we like to admit it or not, I think a lot more of us would have reacted more like Laman and Lemuel than Nephi. A lot of us would have been like, it is a hard thing you have asked of us. Like, can you just write down as much as you remember about the scriptures and then let God do the rest? But, that's not always how God works.
250 miles for Americans is like a grocery trip, right? I mean, in the UK, if we want to go 250 miles, we plan that a year in advance. Like, that is a huge deal for us.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and it's an even bigger deal when you don't have cars and you have to walk it, or you have to use camel or whatever, right? So,
I remember I was more like Laman and Lemuel. I mean, my friends from my mission, I was working in Vegas in December, and some of my mission friends were in St. George, and they said, oh, we'll drive down and come and see you. And then beforehand, a few months before, they had visited the UK and they had stopped in London. And London's like probably like a 2.5 hour drive from where I was. And for them, it was nothing to drive from St. George to Vegas to come and spend the day with us. But when they said come down to London, I was like, whoa, this is a hard thing you ask of me. You know, this is a huge journey. So I feel like if I was, I would have acted like Laman and Lemuel, which is wrong of me, I need to change that. But that makes it all the more inspiring, I think, to read that. And you suddenly understand why Sariah's like, you're a visionary man, Lehi, doing this. What have you done? You're like, we haven't seen them for, it probably would have been, if it was a 2-week journey to walk, then we're talking like a month away.
Yeah, I mean,
it's probably,
by the time Sariah starts complaining, it's probably been more than a month, because she knows how long it takes to go and she knows how long it takes to go back. And she might have assumed, you've got to give them a few days to try and get the plates. But when those 4 weeks and a few days have passed, right? When a month has passed and a few more days go on and her sons aren't coming back yet, that's when she's going to start getting anxious and as a mother. And, this is another thing, not that I want to get off on too many tangents, but I guess this is what we're here for. So, but, for women in the ancient world, in ancient Israel especially, their role, was a big part of their role. I shouldn't reduce their role completely, but a big part of their role was childbearing and raising up seed, right? And providing heirs to the family and things like that. And so mothers in any time and any place are obviously very invested in their kids and would be very worried about them when they're sent on a really dangerous mission. But for Sariah in particular, in this cultural context and in this setting, and I'm not saying it's the right way to view women, it's just the way women were viewed in that society. Her sons would have been so vital to her own identity and the role she had in Israelite society. So she would have been very, very concerned and very invested in their well-being and their survival. And it would have just been devastating for her if her sons did not come back. And again, I know that's true of any mother in any time, in any place, yeah. Right? And so, so this is, again, I think we can be a little more sympathetic. Like sometimes I feel like we see these complaints and we think, oh, they just need to have more faith. But, and that is the end goal is for them to grow and have more faith. And we see that's what happens with Sariah in 1 Nephi 5. But yeah. I think we can be a lot more sympathetic because a lot of times we're the people who need to be having more faith. And I think these stories are there in part so that we can identify with them and understand where they're coming from and what their point of view is. But this would have been a hard thing for Sariah to watch her sons ride off into the sunset, if you will. Not really into the sunset because they were going north. To watch her sons ride off, to go on this really hard journey and do this really hard task because, hey, their dad had a dream or whatever, right? And, how many mothers would be willing to even do that, right? I know if I told my wife I had a dream and our kids needed to go do this really hard thing, we only got a little baby, so we don't have kids that could do anything hard right now anyway. But, if I were to tell that to my wife, she would probably be like, okay, I'm moving the kids out. We're getting a restraining order. You're nuts, right? So the fact that she's already, like, she even she followed Lehi out into the wilderness and she let him send their sons back. She's already shown tremendous faith by that point, I think. And we can understand where she's coming from when they don't come back on time. And we know they couldn't have come back on time because they had to go, they had to make multiple attempts. And this is something that's kind of subtle in the text, but we talk about Lehi's land of inheritance, and that probably was not his house at Jerusalem. That's probably his land up in the area of Manasseh. That's another thing Jeff Chadwick talks about. And that means they had to go. The sons would have had to go get their metal resources, their gold and their silver and their precious things. They have to go on a journey up to their land of inheritance, and that adds more time back and forth, right? And so it's probably been a week or more longer than they expected their sons to be gone, and she's starting to get worried. And they can't just do a real quick video call and see how the boys are doing trying to get those metal plates, right? They have no way to contact them. They just have to wait and hope that their sons come back.